Hi everyone. Today we are talking about reframing. This is the number one, most important thing that you need to do if you want to practice respectful parenting. Respectful and peaceful parenting helps too. Respectful parenting falls under peaceful parenting, but we cannot do this. It is impossible to follow through if you do not reframe the way that we think about our children's behavior.
Yep, absolutely.
Sweet.
And so reframing, you probably maybe heard this term before, but it's any time you kind of approach a situation and then you try to sort of train your brain to think about it differently than your first sort of approach. And so maybe this is something you've actually worked on in other aspects of your life. Maybe a good example would be, let's say you're at work, you're a grocery store clerk, and somebody comes through the checkout line and they seem really rude to you. And you think, oh, God, this person's such a rude person. And reframing would be maybe thinking, maybe this person just had a bad day. Maybe something's going on for them that I don't know. Maybe you even say, hey, how's your day going? And they respond, oh, it's just been such a hard day. And they open up and smile and everyone goes on their way, and it seems now it's a positive situation. So instead of doing that initial, ugh, what a rude person, you kind of think, well, hold on a second, let me think about this differently.
Yeah.
And it can change the way your relationships are with strangers, people you know, and particularly and very importantly, your children.
Yep. Yes. Yep.
So
it's looking things through a different lens, through a different perspective, not reacting right away, but stopping and thinking, okay, maybe I don't have the full information here. Maybe I don't have the full picture. Another good example is when you're driving down the road. I like to remember this, and then someone is doing something, you can automatically think, oh, that person is a jerk, but you don't know what their taste like. Maybe something horrible is going on and they have to rush to the hospital. I don't know.
Yeah.
So it's just nice to go through life not assuming the worst in people.
Yeah.
And thinking that, we don't have full information, and you can imagine a situation where you might do something similar, and that's kind of this empathy, stretching that empathy muscle, thinking about how you could even be pushed to that limit or something.
Yeah.
So, okay.
Let's
see.
So with
What's
kids, this is really important. And the first thing to really consider with children too is they're not developmentally ready to think about everything rationally and do the kind of pausing that we can do and approach a situation without the very impulsive nature of children, which is just they feel everything very much self-centered, and they will get upset over little things.
Yeah.
And it seems like it can be so hard, and it can feel like sometimes they're doing it, it just seems so unfair, right?
So,
right?
So this is the thing that is so funny, and it was the thing that really clicked for me when I found respectful parenting. Kids are not capable of thinking rationally and thinking in the same way that we are. We have had, 30, 40, however many years experience, learning how to deal with our emotions, learning how to deal with people, learning how the world works, everything. So to expect kids to be able to respond in a mature, rational way is asking too much. I think most people agree with that. Most people agree that kids are not capable of everything adults are. The problem is adults think that they need to teach children how to behave like adults. And we're telling you, no, you do not have to teach your children how to behave like an adult. They are going to learn it on their own when they're ready, when they're developmentally ready. Right now, they're not developmentally ready. So we need to meet them where they're at. So for the first step is realizing they are not capable of what we are capable of. They don't have the impulse control, like you said. Their brains are not developed yet. They just, you said self-centered. They have this this view of the world because that's all they know, right?
Yeah.
It's yeah, so this is huge. This is
Yeah.
really big. They literally cannot do what we do.
Yeah.
They can't. So to expect that is asking too
It
much.
is. And even we make these mistakes too. So
Yeah.
uh, it's
It's so
so on
funny.
top of it all, like we make these mistakes already, and maybe not as often as our children, seem, they're not, we're not having necessarily tantrums 3 times a day, but we have our hard times too.
Right.
So
So like we it's so funny because and you wrote this in your notes. You were like, if we're having a bad day, we could come home and say, you know what, I don't really feel like doing the chores. I'm not going to do the chores. Yet if our kid has a bad day and they don't want to do the chores, a lot of parents say, well, you can't talk back to me. That's the rule. Do the chores. And it's like, you are expecting, a lot of people, I think, are expecting more of children than they expect out of themselves.
yeah.
But they don't realize that when children have these reactions, it's an age appropriate reaction. So most adults would say, like, I'm going to bring up an example from later. A tantrum. A kid has a tantrum. They're like, well, I wouldn't do that. Well, yeah, no, you're an adult. But for a 3-year-old, a tantrum is an age appropriate response to a stimulus. That's how they respond to upset. When we might curse or like just get annoyed and walk away, maybe we'll even say something. We could lash out at the person.
Yeah. Say something a little bit mean.
But usually adults can
Yeah.
handle conflict without hitting, and but we have that adult brain. We have the impulse control to not do that.
Yeah.
But kids don't. So we are having the exact same emotional responses as our kids. We just have the adult brain to manage those feelings.
Yeah.
Yes. Okay.
Yeah.
I just went off track
No,
there.
it's good.
Where are we now?
It's good. So so one of the ways you can start to do this is not using negative terminology about your child. So when you feel like, oh, they're just being such a brat, they're being mean, what a bully. These are things that you need to start to realize. This needs a reframe.
Lying. Any negative term you use for your kids is that's where you need to stop. Rewind. Okay, I'm using a negative term. I need to refrain here.
Yes.
Yep.
So that would be a kind of hint to yourself.
Yes.
Wait a second. Let me think about this another way. We want to interpret our children's behavior as the best possible interpretation of their behavior. So we don't want, like, I don't think you want to think of your child as a brat or a bully. And they don't want that either.
No. And when we do think of them that way, then they will start to internalize it. If we use those words, or even if you don't use those words with your kids, but you respond while thinking that, they're going to pick up on those messages you're sending. So they're going to start to internalize, because we value ourselves. We understand our place in the world because we're social beings by the way other people see us too, right? And when you're a kid, you're extremely susceptible to this. You're looking to your parents, you're looking to your family and friends to tell you who you are. Like you're trying to figure it out. And so you'll do something, they'll react, and you'll think, oh, okay, that's what gets that reaction. So if you're constantly hearing, why do you lie all the time? Why are you a bully? These things, the kid will start to internalize it, and often it will become a self-fulfilling prophecy, and they'll start to think, okay, well, that's just who I am now. That's just who I am. I've heard these terms, or I've been treated this way for so long. That's what I do.
Yeah. You bring up a really good point there. It's even if you're not saying these words, you really need to change the way you actually view the child. And I think one of the first ways is to stop using the terms. If you're using those terms about your child, if you talk about your kid in any way that's particularly negative, especially on a regular basis, start changing the terminology first. But as you do that, really try and change your own actions and your own belief. Believe that the child is actually capable of being not a bully. Believe that your child isn't actually being a bully, that there's something else going on for them that's getting this reaction from them, and they don't have the impulse control to let the person know that what's happening, that something's going on in their life.
Right. They cannot stand up for themselves. They cannot be their own advocate because they're so little. I mean, they maybe can try, but it's super hard for a kid to do that themselves, we need to be their advocates for them. So we need to step back, look at the behavior, and say, what is going on here?
Yeah.
And
change
and
our
then,
own automatic reactions. I mean, that's what your child's doing when they are lashing out or getting angry or saying mean things to you or to someone else. That's their automatic reaction. They've just they're reacting to their environment. So when you in turn react to them with anger, frustration, and irritation, now you're reacting to the environment angrily.
So and it
now
creates the storm. It's a storm.
Yeah,
it's a vicious cycle.
Then they're going to get defensive, and then you're going to start trying to get more strict and frustrated.
You can get into power struggles this way.
Yeah. So it's yeah. I mean, that's a good place to sort of start thinking about your kid. Don't use those terms. Try and approach the situation with compassion.
If you feel like you are triggered, though, take a step back and breathe and maybe walk away.
Pause.
Because that's what, when we say like the word triggered, that's what we mean is when you react very quickly and you have an emotional response to stimulus. And if that is with your kid, then it's time to step back and try and reframe.
Try and reframe. Exactly. Yeah, which is what this is about. So, so definitely, and there have been times, we have our bad days too, where something's going on and we just, something's like every little thing might be bothering us. And when that's happening, make sure your kid is in a safe place, but you can go to the bathroom, take a couple deep breaths, whatever you do to help calm yourself down. If it's, sometimes I go to the kitchen and I, get a little chocolate or something, and I just kind of like eat it in the corner and just enjoy it. It's just, we all have our things that we know kind of help us out. Yeah. So to take the time to make sure you are ready to then sit down and view your child through a different lens.
Yes. Yep.
And
what's the next one?
Oh yeah. So,
did we get everything on the other page?
Yeah.
Wow.
We did.
Okay, cool. We're rolling. We're getting there.
Yeah.
Moving right along.
So I kind of liked
expectations.
Yeah. We kind of talked about this a little bit. But
so did you want to say it or do you want me to? Whichever one.
Either way.
Yeah, so what we have here is oftentimes this can happen when we have expectations. And when our kids do not meet our expectations, it's important to remember that that's our issue, not our child's issue. So then we need to go back to the drawing board and figure out maybe the expectation was not age appropriate. Maybe there's a deeper issue going on that day. Your child needs more support. There's a whole bunch of reasons why a child might not meet our expectations, but it is never their fault. It's never their issue. That's our issue. Those are our expectations. We were disappointed, and now we need to be the adult and figure out how to move forward.
Yeah.
Don't put that on our kids. Don't guilt our kids into thinking it's their responsibility to always meet our expectations. I just think that's a very controversial thing, actually, that I just said.
Yeah, no, it is. And I think that's one of the things that gets us into, like thinking our kids might be, let's say, oh, well, they're so lazy. They never do what I say. Or, they don't listen, which we did an episode about listening. They might be listening. We don't know if they heard what you said or not, but we can't be in their heads, and that's our expectations. Yeah. And when we have those expectations and they aren't following through, it's our responsibility, like you said. And when it starts turning into a power struggle and you start thinking that your kid might be doing something, and maybe you even think your kid's doing something intentionally to bother you, that's great place to reframe. And instead of creating that power struggle, you start approaching it with compassion instead of reaction. Yes. Don't get mad at your kid. Maybe try and get to their level and figure out what's going on. Hey, I realized I asked you 3 times to go put away the dishes. What's going on? Is everything okay? Just check in with your kid. Ask them questions. And
but make sure you're in a good headspace.
Yes, if you're asking angrily.
And Yeah, and if you get an answer you don't like, don't react, because then they're going to shut down and they're not going to want to talk about important things with you in the future. So don't do that if you're not in the right headspace. If you're mad, don't do that.
Right.
Yeah.
No, but that's also part of reframing is really internalizing this idea.
You have to internalize it.
And it takes time. And we again, like I said, we have our bad days too and bad moments. So it's something just to work on over time. And the more you do it, the easier it gets. And the easier it gets, the more you see it working. And so it's motivating to kind of keep moving forward with this technique, sort of.
Yes.
But it's changing your own mind. And the more you do it, the more your brain actually starts going towards these sort of reframing more often. So
it'll become more natural. Yeah. It totally will. This is very hard to do, especially because I think all of us were raised with this idea that we need to discipline kids to get them to behave. And this philosophy turns that on its head. We're talking about looking at children a completely different way.
Yeah.
Yep.
I was looking at the notes, but I did hear what you said. I did. I was half listening. So yeah, and this kind of goes along with all of this too. That children are not responsible for how you feel. So when you are, when your kid says something to you that maybe feels like it's hurting your feelings, they aren't actually responsible for those feelings.
And we hear this with adults. This is important. As an adult, no one is responsible for your feelings. You're responsible for your own feelings.
Yeah.
Right? So we talk about this in terms of adults and helping with like adult relationships. So the same thing goes with kids.
Same thing goes with kids, yes. Mm-hmm. And this is what reframing is really helpful for, is trying to change those feelings that you might have when you get angry because maybe your kid did something that makes you angry. Reframing is helpful to try and actually change those emotions in you. It's sort of a mindfulness technique where over time you will stop feeling angry if you start interpreting their behavior more positively, or understanding that they're not capable of giving you their best at that moment. Yeah. And I think we can understand this a lot. Like, how often, maybe some of you you have a job with a boss that's really overbearing. Maybe they're really, they're hard to be around, and they are super demanding all the time. And that, you're just in a mood all the time. So you take that home, and when you take that home and you have a partner that you can talk to, that's you don't want them to shut down because you're bringing this anger home that you're trying to get out, because you want someone that can sit there and listen to you. And that's all your kid wants too. Your kid is angry and they don't have anyone else. You mentioned that before. They can't call their their sibling,
they can't call their best friend.
Call their best friend. Maybe teenagers can, but like
young kids.
Kids, they really can't. And this is really young kids. You should do this for all ages, but it's young kids that I think oftentimes trigger our early on that behavior early on, where they're super impulsive and they don't have the ability to just control their actions. So they only have us, and we have so many different outlets to fall back on. When we're having a hard time, we had that day with our boss that felt really unfair. We can go home and tell our partners about it. I can call family members and friends, and our child has only us. So if we're not the ones to sit there and listen to them and try to be understanding about what's going on, especially when we are the ones that are oftentimes causing these issues, because we're controlling their lives. They don't control their lives a lot of times. It's us. They go along for the ride.
You are missing an opportunity for a profound connection here.
Yeah.
It's amazing how much you can connect with your child if you just sit with them and let them express their emotions and keep them safe and let them know you're calm and that you love them. Mm-hmm. It's amazing.
Yeah. It's a great opportunity. You build trust.
Mm-hmm. You build trust.
Connection. And that's what I want. I want to build a relationship with my child that over time they can come to me with any issue, even issues that they're having with and about me.
Right.
Because I would like to work on that and try and improve our relationship rather than continue in the cycle of negativity.
Well, especially since as they get older, the issues are going to become more complex, more life-changing. Mm-hmm. The issues they have now are pretty small, so it's important to feel safe talking to us about these small ones first. Yeah. This is them testing. They're developing a relationship with us, and what the relationship we build with them now is going to define how the rest of our lives look together.
Yeah, absolutely. It's like, do I feel safe getting so mad at my mom because she didn't let me have a popsicle? Wow, that felt safe. Okay. Wow, that's great. That's foundation right there. And it seems so little, but it's actually huge. And so it's so important to reframe behavior to a more constructive interpretation, something positive. Think about it as an opportunity to build and grow, both with your child and for your child. And the more you model this for them, they'll get it too over time. So that's...
Oh, right. You said that. So I was going to look at the notes. The way that they learn. So I was saying, like, you can't teach them. The way you teach them is through modeling. And so they're going to build this empathy muscle. They're going to learn all of these things by how we respond to them first. Mm-hmm. So we need to show them empathy and patience and love, and it will come. It will come. We can't lecture it to them. We can't
shame them. We can't shame them into being...
I mean, you can try. It might work. Some people have done it. It's just I don't think that's the best way to do it. It doesn't feel...
No, it doesn't feel genuine.
Right.
It doesn't feel very genuine, and
well, what we're talking about here...
They're going to learn from those techniques, too, so when they get older, that's what they're going to do, too.
It is. This is how...
They'll start to do the same things that you're doing.
Yep.
So and that's why also when they yell at you, and you yell back, then they yell at you, and then you're yelling, and then you wonder why, as a teenager, you just kind of get in these yelling matches all the time, and you like, right. Why can I never sit down and have a conversation with my kid? Well, you kind of built this
adversarial
relationship, and
right.
You've modeled for them that screaming and getting angry is an appropriate response to behavior that annoys you. So they do that too. Well, I'm annoyed by that behavior, so I'm going to scream and
right.
get annoyed.
And what we're really talking about through this whole philosophy is how to have healthy relationships with all people. So we're saying that there's a way to have a healthy relationship with a spouse, with a friend, with a sister, and with your child. And it's the same steps. It's the same philosophy.
Yeah, it is.
Yep.
It is. And the more you do it, again, more you do it with your kid, the more you're going to do it in other aspects of your life too.
Yes.
And maybe you're the kind of person already that tries to think that way when that person's driving crazy down the road. Well, I can't know what's going on in their life. Maybe they're trying to get somewhere in emergency. So then just extend that to your kid too. Extend. And if you don't do that, try to start doing it in your normal day-to-day life with other adults. And it gets easier, but it can always, it's a challenge. It's challenging the way your brain thinks.
Yes.
And it's really, but it's got so many benefits.
Yeah. And it's going to help us. It'll help you respond in the moment.
Yeah.
It will. So I was just looking at this, and we did two of the examples I wrote down already. So I think we should just do the last one, which is an example of reframing is if a child does something triggering and laughs or smiles while they're doing it. So let's say the child hits the dog and smiles beforehand, and you say, no, don't hit the dog. And then they hit the dog and they laugh about it and run away. That is a situation. There's a lot of situations that I've been in where kids will laugh when they do something that looks pathological. And so you could say like, oh, he's a sociopath, or it's a pathological, horrible behavior. He has no, like,
Sympathy or
empathy
empathy. Yeah.
for the animal, and or he's just doing it to get a reaction. There's all of these negative ways that you can look at it, and that's a particular event that is
so common
and hard to reframe, because the reaction isn't one that you would think. You're like, but he laughed and he smiled, so you think you know what's going on in his head. And I am here to tell you that when a kid does that and they're smiling and they're laughing, they really feel uncomfortable. We touched on this on another episode. It's extremely common for people to laugh in nervous situations, and I think this is exactly what's going on. If it's not what's going on, then I still think you should react the same way, because we don't know for sure. Mm-hmm. So this is one of the reasons I think about this philosophy. I love this philosophy so much, is it kind of doesn't matter, but if you respond in this positive way, and look at the reaction at the kid's behavior as communication, and you look at it as neutrally or as in as positive light as possible, then the reaction you're going to get back is going to be the best reaction they can give. So you are giving them your best self so they can give you their best selves. Mm-hmm. And I think you'll be surprised at how well this works.
Yeah. And so I think instead of thinking, oh, my kid wants to hurt the dog, my kid's 2, and actually we have a little dog, and he goes up and sometimes does a quick, he'll start to try to whap the dog or whatever, and it's my job to make sure that both the dog and the kid stay safe. And that's the first thing to remember. And then also reframing that behavior. He's having a really hard time right now. My child's having a hard time, and it's your job to stop it. And instead of just screaming to stop or telling your kid that they're, doing a horrible thing, see it as the communication it is, and calmly walk up and say, I see you're having a hard time keeping yourself and the dog safe. I'm going to move the dog, or I'm going to move you back. I'm going to put the dog somewhere safe. And, the kid doesn't feel like what they did, the kid isn't going to feel shame or, all of the things that put them into this role that make them want to keep doing it. What was that? Why did my parent say that this time? Like, what? I'm going to do it again. I'm going to test it again and again and again and again.
If we do not hold strong boundaries, then it makes kids, especially young kids, feel so uncomfortable, because they don't know who's in charge. So when you start saying, don't do this, don't do that, but you're not actually physically holding that boundary, then the kid is like, well, can I or can't I? Because they're obviously doing it.
Yeah.
So that is not holding a limit. Yelling and saying things is not holding a limit. Holding a limit is physically stopping a child or preventing whatever is continuously happening from happening. Yeah. So you can either take steps like, okay, now they can never just be in the same room together or something, but you have to get creative with your solutions and recognize that when kids laugh or smile or do things over and over again, they are uncomfortable and they don't understand who's in charge, and they know how vulnerable they are. They know that they need us. So it scares them when they think that we're out of control, or we don't have control over the situation.
Yeah.
So when we say to do something and then we freak out when they don't do it because we didn't hold that limit.
That's not fair to them.
Not fair to them. Yeah. You're setting them up for failure, and you're setting yourself up for disappointment.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. So that was a lot of information there. And the key part of that is that reframing. Just think outside the box. Try and think about what's going on for the child in that moment instead of just what your interpretation of their behavior is. Mm-hmm. Really approach it with love and compassion, and know that your kid really does want to do their best. They really do, and they don't want to disappoint you. So when you continually feel disappointed, they're disappointing you.
That's when you get the
really
worst
hard. That's when you get the worst behavior, because it's it's hard on your kid, and it's going to be hard on you. So, yeah. So this would be a good place to
wrap up.
Let's
do that. Thank you for listening.
Yeah.
And subscribe, please, if you like what you saw here. Please share this video. And if you have any questions, write questions at parentingtrap.com. I'm Alex. This is my sister Barbara, and we try and do this every week at least.
At least, yeah. So thanks a lot for listening.
Thanks. Bye.